So today, as you probably know, we're talking about direct-to-garment and sublimated face mask printing. Really, this was kind of created to open up new opportunities for some of you out there who might be thinking about getting into either the sublimation or direct-to-garment printing game, or are already in there and are looking for new avenues to kind of extend your current offerings. So let's just kind of jump right into things here. I do want to start with a basic overview so you guys have an idea of what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about why sublimation, or why would we want to use direct-to-garment printing? What are the requirements? What do we need? Are there extra accessories, extra platens, those kind of things? And then, of course, we always like to show a demonstration here too. So towards the middle, kind of towards the end there, we're going to do two prints. One, I'm going to show you how I sublimated a face mask, and then I'll also show you how I did a direct-to-garment print with the mask as well. Like I said, we'll talk a little bit about the cost analysis. I'll probably let Matt kind of chime in there. And then at the end, we'll open it up for you guys, and any questions that you guys might have, we'll answer it to the best of our ability. So let's kind of jump into this first slide right here. So, and this is real basic. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Sublimation versus pigment, kind of what we're dealing with here. So sublimation ink, for those who are in the know there, it is going to be embedded into the material. So you're basically dyeing those fibers, where the pigment, after we lay down essentially a pre-treatment, a glue for it to grab onto, then we can print on top of that. So what we can do is if we're dealing with something like cotton, then we're in a good spot. So let's just kind of jump off the science for a second and dive into more of the whys here. So direct-to-garment printing is really great for a couple reasons here. One thing, there's basically very few fabrics that we cannot print onto. So whether you're dealing with 100% cotton, I know a lot of folks like those poly cotton blends, the 50/50s. We're seeing a lot of popularity with the tri-blends as well. So again, the nice thing about the direct-to-garment printing is we are going to print directly onto that fabric, and we have a lot more options when it comes to materials as well. Another thing I want to point out here, which is big for a lot of people, is that with direct-to-garment printing, we can print on dark or black fabric. So a huge benefit there. I don't know if you guys have, are like my closet where I really don't have a whole lot of just blank white shirts there. So if we're ever dealing with a black mask, we can actually lay down that white base before we finally put that color over top. So it really gets a nice vibrant print even on dark materials. Now, one of the downsides, I'll say, if we're kind of comparing the two, it will be a little bit more expensive generally. Now, the nice thing about the mask prints, as you can imagine, we're printing on a pretty small surface area there. And for the most part, we're printing a fairly, a design with a decent amount of transparency in it. So we'll go over that towards the end there, but I can tell you, our mask prints are significantly less than what you would expect from a t-shirt print, anywhere from the 5 cents to maybe 25, 30 cents territory. The other catch to direct-to-garment printing, so you know, is that it does require that pre-treatment, especially if we're going to lay anything down onto a dark garment. We do need to make sure that that pre-treatment liquid is sufficiently coating the material. That's going to allow that white ink to finally stick to it and actually give you a nice kind of quality final print. And last thing I want to mention here is Epson has gone kind of the extra mile here with their pre-treatment solution. So it's been what they call OEKO-TEX certified. So I know some people out there might be seeing some of the concerns with, what are we breathing if we print on these masks? I mean, is everything safe? If I put this on my child's face, is it going to be something I need to worry about? And thankfully, we can say no, since Epson has all their chemicals certified for us off the bat. So definitely a nice, safe result there. So I want to jump from direct-to-garment and just briefly talk about sublimation. So sublimation is a little bit of a different process. It's going to be a few more, an extra step, I should say. I'll put it in there like that. It's a cheaper level of entry. I don't know if you guys have seen the 570s out there now. So, now we're jumping into a 2500 point of entry, and that's going to be a 24-inch printer. So you get a lot of bang for your buck is how I'll put that. Overall, generally, your ink cost will be lower. Again, it's just the way the sublimation ink works, and it onto that transfer paper, which is a fairly inexpensive transfer sheet as well. Now, our limitations with sublimation come down to our fabrics. So unfortunately, unlike direct-to-garment printing, cotton is kind of out of the question. Really, it has to have a polyester base of some sort. Even if it's on a hard substrate, you need that poly coating. So what we look for in these particular masks is generally something that's either 90+% polyester, and that's going to give us that most vibrant final quality print. If you might have seen some of like the blends, like the 50/50s, if you try to sublimate onto something like that, unfortunately, we end up with kind of more of a vintage or a 20 washes kind of look. So for some people, that's something they want. But in general sublimation, we want to stick with the polyesters, and we especially want to stick with the white point, the whitest polyester we can deal with, because that's going to give us our most color accurate results. You can imagine, since there's no white ink in sublimation, we really aren't going to be able to lay down a base coat before we put that final print on top of it. So that's why we recommend strongly working with a white base. You know, grays and things, light grays and things of that nature can work with a black. Just know that it definitely will shift your colors as well there. So kind of the two sides of things. Let's jump into, I know you guys have probably seen, you know, every day something new is popping up on these masks. So I just want to give you kind of a brief, quick rundown on just a few of the options that are out there. And a lot of it really pertains to what you want to do with your business. You know, Platens for direct to garment are kind of our essential requirement for getting a good quality print. So the reason I bring up these masks is there's a couple types. So the one I have here in front of us is a Bella canvas. This is basically a 50-50 or 48-52 here. Now, the reason I like these masks, they're flat, there are no seams. So essentially, and you're gonna get that same print quality from Bella canvas that hopefully you guys are kind of familiar with there. So this will be a little bit easier to deal with since we're not having to worry about that middle seam. Now, jumping over to these, and I know it might be kind of difficult to see here, but this does have a bit of a seam down the middle. Not that it's a big deal for us with direct-to-garment printing, since essentially we can print right over those seams, but something to be aware of is when you're putting it onto your platen, you want to make sure you can get it as flat as possible. Basically, it's going to give you that crisp final print that we're looking for there. So this particular one, 95.5, so it's going to print like your high-end cotton prints if you're used to that on the direct-to-garment printers. It also has a little bit of a spandex. So again, we do want to make sure, since this is something that us as humans are going to be wearing, we want comfort. Again, it's right in our faces. So that's going to be the two factors that I can guarantee you'll be dealing with your customers is A, a great design, and B, a great feel. So something just to be considerate of there as well. Now I want to show you kind of the polymaths, and there's quite a few out there lately. You know, again, what I want to look for here is when you're about to purchase, just make sure that it is majority polyester. You know, 90% we can get away with that. You know, I've seen some of the 95.5s as well with a poly kind of spandex or viscous material. So these are really easy to use. So again, with our sublimation side of things, what I do, and I'll show you this video here shortly, is we'll actually wrap it around these particular masks. So, and the last one I want to kind of show you guys that's kind of a cool one in my opinion that I'm seeing a lot of too are these neck gaiters. So again, you know, you can sublimate right to them, especially if you're dealing with a pure white garment. And remember, if in sublimation, even though we're starting out with that pure white, we can essentially dye the entire fiber, dye all the fibers, the fabric there. So we could turn this into, right now I could turn this a blank white into a camo print if we wanted to, or something of that nature. Now the one thing I put down here that I do want to mention to you guys as well is the cut and sew side. So with these, since they are essentially sewn together and they're kind of wrapped around there, you know, we've seen some people where they'll start with a swatch of fabric, print to that, and they'll sew it together themselves. So there's quite a few options out there as far as getting the proper material, the proper masks, and of course the proper print as well. So just a few things to kind of food for thought. And you know, if any questions are popping up, we'll kind of deal with those towards the end. So, you know, write those down if you have any questions on the materials of that. So I'm just going to really briefly touch this. I think most of you might be familiar with the sublimation process already. So with sublimation, we're transferring to a transfer sheet, basically a glorified ink holder, if you will. You're going to apply that to your garment or your fabric, whatever material it might be. You're going to put a parchment sheet on top to protect the platen, to protect the material there as well. And then we're going to actually apply heat and pressure. So heat and pressure are the two big things that we need to deal with. That's going to be essentially the two most important steps. I can already guarantee you we're going to get great prints and great results out of the printer. So our next step there is to make sure we have our proper settings dialed in. And we can always help you out with that as well. There's a lot of people out there who kind of have some settings and general ideas dialed in, but if you ever need any kind of further explanation on that, we can absolutely dive into that as well. So let's jump over here to a process. Oops. And I'm not going to, again, just touch on this briefly. So the reason I want to show you guys this one is I do recommend generally the swing away for most sublimation, and not just for masks because it's more of a universal thing. So if you're dealing with any thicker substrates, I know some people, they might sublimate onto wood as well. We've noticed that the swing away gives you more, a better result, whereas the clamshell, it might be great for threading some of your garments, but what we've found is if anything is larger than about 1 inch or 2 inches, that clamshell puts more pressure on the back, obviously, than the front. can cause discrepancies in our final print there. So swing away is generally a good rule of thumb there. Now, I do want to just mention, since we're talking about heat presses, if this is something that you're getting into now, a few things to consider here. Sometimes with the 16 by 20 is generally, 110 power will be fine. If you start jumping into some of the larger sublimation objects as well, that's when we might need to consult an electrician. You might need a 220 connection there. So, let us know on that one. We can definitely help you with the electric requirements there. Just want to make sure that the machine you get is going to be compatible with your guys' location there as well. And then again, I just want to mention one thing, because there's a lot of heat presses that are out there. Now, and I'm not saying don't, but I always caution when it comes to some of the cheaper heat presses. And the main reason is consistency across the heating platen here. So what I can say on these Geonites and Hottronics that we sell, excellent support, made here in the United States, edge to edge, corner to corner, you're going to get the same results across the board there. So just something to be aware of. I usually strongly suggest you don't skimp when it comes to your heat press, especially when it comes to sublimation, as that's going to be one of your most determining factors for quality there. So let's jump back to DTG real quick. So the DTG process, for those who are kind of new to it or thinking about it, is a pre-treatment solution is required. So really what this is, it's a water-based glue. So essentially this is going to lay down onto the material so that you can put that ink on top of it. Now essentially, technically you don't have to pre-treat some of the white. So if you're putting directly to a white garment, it's not necessary. However, I've noticed that even just applying a little bit of pre-treat gives me a final crisp and slightly more vibrant image as well. So just something to know that when you're doing DTG printing, direct to garment printing there, especially if it's on a dark garment, we need to make sure that that pre-treatment is laid down evenly and consistently as well. And then we'll just briefly talk about the heat process here. So for direct-to-garment printing, generally we recommend the clamshell, especially if it's dedicated for your direct-to-garment prints. These have a hover mode, and they also have an auto pop-up. So kind of a nice feature. Again, I kind of call it the one-man band operation. So if you're dealing with basically threaded shirts and things of that nature, this does make your life a little bit easier. And of course, if I'm in the middle of prepping another shirt and I miss that timer countdown, I'll have that auto pop up for me as well. Now, the nice thing about masks is we're really not dealing with anything with too much curvature to it. So we can use these flats and we'll have a great result. I can guarantee that. So again, don't skimp on those heat presses. They are really a very important and integral tool in the final print quality there. So I really briefly want to talk about kind of the ways you can set up your direct-to-garment printing. You guys might have seen there's plenty of Platens out there, and we carry many. So I just want to show you some of the options. Hat Platen's a popular one that I know some people might have. So in our demonstration we're going to do here shortly, I'll show you how I put it on the Hat Champ there. Now I will say, for folks who are getting into mass production and are going to make it a mainstay for them, we have a new Platen that we're just about to introduce as well, which is the face mask kit here. So this is from Keyprint. So the nice thing about this, it's actually specifically formulated for these masks. So it's a tuck system. You put it in there, you replace your Platen and the top portion with what they call their master adapter. And that allows you to actually use a few of their different Platens. So really great. Honestly, it's for ease of use, especially if you're dealing with masks, this is a fantastic option that's out there. So we can talk a little more of that later, but I do want to kind of jump into really quick some of the demonstrations here, just so you can see the process and maybe get more of a clear idea of how everything works there. And so I'll show you a video and I'll talk about it a little bit as it's going there. So I figure we'll start with, let's start with direct garment printing, since we just talked about that. So hopefully you guys can see this here. I'll start that over, just kind of starting fresh. So I'll let you know. So what I did here, I wrapped it around my hat Platen, and this particular Hat Champ actually has two, basically they're kind of screws that I was able to attach these the sides to. So it really kept it nice and flat for me there. So let's go ahead and watch that process. Now again, technically, since this is going onto a white fabric, we really don't need pre-treat on it. Now, again, like I said, sometimes I've noticed that laying down just a little bit, you don't need to lay down nearly as much as you might with a dark garment, but it seems to give me a final crisp print. So when the actual ink hits that garment, it really just adheres to it properly, and just looks great. Now, this I set up through Garment Creator. So for those who know a little bit about Garment Creator, it's the software that comes with the Epson 2100 here, both Mac and PC compatible. So what I did was I did a test, made sure that I had my logo that I wanted to print in the correct spot. So I printed onto basically just a test sheet, very low quality, maybe a couple cent print to make sure I had my alignment accurate. And then you can see after I applied that mask, it laid down right where I wanted it to. So the nice thing about Garment Creator too is I can save that. So if I'm doing mask production, I already have my location saved and know my sizing, I can actually save that as a preset. So every time I go back in there, a click or two, and I'll have this perfectly set for me. So what you probably notice here is I'm not actually taking it to the heat press in this case. So what I did was I have a heat gun that I just kind of have on hand here. I put it on high heat, and again, just enough to cure it there while it's on the platen, a little bit easier. Now, if you're dealing with larger production, let's just say maybe you're dealing with a couple masks at a time, that way it might be worth it for you to actually go have a jig that you can create for your heat press. That way you can actually cure multiple at once. So real simple there. Now I think I would like to jump into the sublimation side as well, just so you can kind of see the polyester kind of side of things. So here we go. Now, I know this is probably not new to some of you, but I will kind of mention a few things about sublimation printing. Now, this is the Epson 570, one of the, by far, the hottest selling printer here now. 24 inches, you can do the roll. A nice thing about this as well is it does have a sheet feed. So if I'm not worrying about, maybe a larger substrate, what I can do is just throw an 8.5 by 11 transfer sheet in there, and I can use that to kind of conserve some of this media. Now, what I did here was I just printed a large 24 by, I believe it's about 10 or 12 inches. And that gave me enough. So honestly, I could probably knock out about 3 or 4 masks with this particular print. And I'll show you here in a second when the print finishes. What I do is I just kind of line it up where I like it, and I'll apply some thermal tape basically to kind of keep everything from shifting during the process there. So I know we can't really tell with this one, but these are mirrored. So basically when it comes off, you might notice that some of the text might be backwards. That's fine, because when we apply that to our final substrate there, it will print in the proper orientation. So you can see, I just put my mask in there. I cut off a little excess just so it was a little bit easier for me to work with. Just kind of align it where I knew I kind of wanted it. And as you can see, I just folded it over there. Now I want to make sure that it's touching and everything has been covered completely. So I kind of sealed it there a little bit with this tape finally. Now over to the heat press. I'm using the clamshell for this one since it's what we had in our office here. So I didn't want to waste any time. So I actually sublimated both sides of this. So this is the second side that I'm sublimating right now. So one thing I want to mention on that is some of these heat presses, I know the Geonite and Hydronic specifically, you can actually get bottom heating elements for it as well. So if I'm doing things like socks, or if I'm doing things, in this case, masks, I can actually just do one press, sublimate both sides at the same time, and kind of increase production that way. So again, a nice thing, especially if your volume starts to grow significantly. As you can see here, I'm about 380, 390, I did about 60 seconds per side, and I felt that gave me some great results. Again, we just want to be careful that we don't scorch, leave it on there too long, or anything of that nature. So now with this clamshell, it does have the auto pop-up. Now again, since we're sublimating, I'm always a little cautious of ghosting. So what I do is you're going to see, I'm actually going to kind of hold my hand down here so it doesn't just kind of automatically pop up on me and go willy-nilly. And again, that's going to keep the consistency there. If there's any kind of shift when the heat's applied to it, you might see what they call ghosting, or you might notice a little bit of a blur there. But as long as we're cautious of that, we will have a fantastic print. So you can see here kind of where the ink actually came off of the paper, just really just attached right to that particular mask there. So hopefully that was kind of a decent indicator of how easy both sides of this are. And I'll tell you, it's not uncommon to see both of these integrated together, where if I get the results or get the, if I get the clientele that needs the polyester printed masks and they want more of a custom design, or if I want maybe a funny saying or something like that, there's two options there, especially if we're dealing with the dark. That's usually kind of our indicator that it's time to go into the direct-to-garment world. But all right, well, hopefully that was kind of eye-opening for you. I know it probably wasn't new to everybody, but for those of you, hopefully it was a good kind of demonstration there to see the process. So now I think I want to talk about what I'm sure everyone's in the back of everyone's mind a little bit there. So the cost, right? Again, we are dealing with a little bit of a smaller substrate. So what I have here is the particular sublimation cost that I came up with. Matt, I don't know if you want to kind of talk a little bit about some of the cost analysis here, but you guys can probably see that sublimation is very inexpensive. And as you saw too, now this result wasn't just for that particular mask. That was that entire 24 by 12 inch print. So, 38 total cents, and I can at least get probably 3 to 4 masks out of that. So.
Yeah, if you joined our other webinars, I mean, the key to whole sublimation, your cost is going to be not high at all as far as inks go. With the sublimation ink, when you're applying to the product, I mean, the product is going to be your main cost. And so most of these, sublimation face masks, I mean, they're going to be white polyester based, and that's how you're doing sublimation because you're not printing white ink. It can range. I mean, it ranges all over the place. Some sell in 10 packs, some sell in 100 packs. They can range from $2 to about maybe $6 on a face mask, depending on what type it is, and if it's a type of polyester, maybe it's got a cotton insert in it to kind of help that person breathe and be a little bit more comfortable. So it kind of ranges in that as far as your cost of face masks go. And like I said, there's a lot of sources out there that have various prices, but that's kind of your range there when it comes to sublimation. On the cotton side, it's about the same cost. I mean, you're talking like about $4 to $5 for a cotton-based face mask for DTG. And with that, you can get different colors, black or pink or whatever it might be, because you can print on to the fabric using white ink. So that's the key there. And so I don't know, Zach, if you have a cost analysis on the DTG side.
I do, yes, sir. And so here, go back to that one. So here we are on the DTG, and exactly like Matt said, your biggest cost here is going to be the mask. So, if you can find a good source for that, or if you find one that particularly you and your client like, that's a great opportunity. As you can see here, now on this particular print, I will say I did not have to lay the white base down. So we were looking at a 5-cent print. With that white base, maybe looked about 10, maybe 15 at the most in this situation. So you can see we're not even using a full milliliter of ink here.
Yeah.
So very
and on the gator side, I mean, gators are probably primarily going to be sublimation, and just because on the material polyester based, and that's let it breathe a little bit more, and you can get a little bit more colorful, when you're doing gators along a bigger size area. But again, gator cost for the material itself for sublimation material is probably a little bit higher, about $5 to $6, for that material. But then when you're sublimating, it can be as colorful as can be, and you're talking about cents, maybe like 50 cents or something, maybe that, on your cost on your ink. So that's kind of what your idea, as far as total cost goes. And maybe if you do want to get into this and kind of add this to your DTG business, or maybe the sublimation side, that's kind of the idea of what you're talking about is cost, and then maybe where you can sell them. And so if you do have a market, do you have a group or something that you think you can, make this in addition to your business, and that's, kind of what have an idea of what, your margin is. The other side of it, Zach mentioned we do have a face mask platen now for our DTG customers. We are going to, I think it's already up on the web right now, and that cost for that platen is $400, and there's videos and everything that shows you how you can attach it to your F2100 DTG printer, and so it's very easy to do. So definitely, if I think, like it or not, this is kind of the trend, and it might go on for who knows how long. So it might, keep growing in popularity, and that might be something you just kind of have to, look at adding to your business. So we do have a platen that's going to be available, and I think that's that's a face mask kit cost. Mm-hmm. Now, just to get the face mask platen alone, I think it's about $350 for that. So it's a little bit less in price, but anyways, just call us if you have any questions there and how that works, and if if you do want to maybe add that to your D2G platform. Yeah, there we go.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was great. And one thing I know, because we kind of just touched on sublimation on the 570, I do want to just bring one more thing in there as well for the higher end production side of things. We're seeing some people with the 44 inches, even some of these 64-inch sublimation units. What they'll do, rather than having to buy the pre-sewn fabric for a premium, what they can do is they can find the particular fabric they like to work with, the one that they know that they like, and the one that their customer likes, and they can print large swatches of that. So again, I know we're jumping into a little bit of the cut and sew, but I do want to mention that there's very significant margins on that side. So if you're thinking about kind of jumping up from maybe the consumer tier to more of the production kind of environment, then we definitely have some options for you there as well. The only difference on there is we're going to jump into obviously the larger size printers, but now we're going to look into some of the larger heat presses, particularly the calendar presses for some of you guys out there as well. So, if anybody's looking for a larger production environment, like Matt said, give us a call and we can definitely help you out with that too. So.
Yeah, and another thing is, if you think, maybe this is something you want to jump into and you're not doing it right now, I mean, one of the perfect entry-level printers is that F570
Absolutely.
printer. 24 inches, sublimate. I mean, your cost is real low. You start off with, 2 sets of bulk ink to start off with, 3 rolls of paper, and, and after that, it's like, whatever you think you want to sublimate, if it's face mask or something else. I mean, it's a great printer to get going and try to get into this type of business.
And I'm glad Matt mentioned that too, because one thing I will say that we particularly love about the 570 is essentially after that first purchase, you have everything you need right there to make that money back. So with the 3 rolls of paper, 100 foot, and we've got 2 sets of ink. So essentially, if if the market's right and everything, you will be able to make that money back with that initial investment. So a pretty exciting thing there too. And if anyone doesn't know, that the ink price is unbelievably low. So we're looking at about $18 for a 140 milliliter bottle. So some kind of great things there too. So hopefully you can kind of see the pros and cons. Now, I do just real briefly want to go back to this final slide. So I just want to reiterate here, and I call this kind of limitation. So as you guys both, as everyone kind of knows here. So with the direct to garment, our biggest limitation is essentially going to be our size. So this particular 2100 prints at a maximum of 16 by 20. Now, obviously for our masks, that's more than fine. If you're thinking about printing directly to fabric, that might be something to be considerate of as well. Now, the polyester side of direct-to-garment printing does require a separate pre-treat. So if you're dealing with both cotton and polyester in your direct-to-garment printer, you will need to have a separate pre-treat for that particular 100% polyester blend. Now, again, there's a higher initial investment with direct-to-garment printing. So, know that you're probably going to need a pre-treat machine, you're going to need a heat press, and then you're going to need the actual printer itself. So just kind of know that up front. Now, we do have a lot of options with the direct-to-garment as well. As you can see, we can print onto the dark fabrics. We have a white ink. We have a lot more material that we can actually directly print onto. So something to be considerate there as well. Now, on sublimation, our limitations are going to be, since there's no white ink in the printer, our prints are not going to show up on dark materials. Cotton will not accept this particular type of ink. And then again, our print size is obviously 24 or larger, but the size of our heat press is going to be our big limitation there. So for masks, obviously, we don't really need the world's largest heat press, but it's something to be considerate if you're going to add a few different items to the repertoire there. So I think from there, I think that's a pretty decent overview. Matt, I don't know if you want to kind of finish up on these 2 slides. I've got kind of the turnkey solution here, which is kind of one of Epson's, I call it their claim to fame there. So I don't know, Matt, you want to talk a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, just like other webinars, if you did attend, I mean, the cool thing about Epson is everything's in the same house. I mean, there's some other printers that, they don't have another software or maybe paper or using other ink, and the support is just, kind of just a little spotty. Really, Epson, everything's in the house. You're talking about the paper, the ink, the software, and the support, and they make their own print heads. So everything's kind of one together. There won't be any questions. The support is amazing. The warranty that comes with both of these printers are great, and just, and then in addition, Imaging Spectrum, we provide you support too, tech support over the phone, answer questions. You've got a combined effort there. And so it is really, that, I guess, quote unquote, turnkey solution altogether that makes it really, work all together as one and drive down your costs, present something that's really vibrant, very colorful, total sellable, total profit margin, all the way around to help out your business.
Absolutely. And, on that note, I'm just going to kind of piggyback real quick. And like Matt said, with everything kind of combined together here, we know they're going to work together properly. So if we're kind of dealing with, color profiling, or if you ever need any help on that too, like Matt said, we're fortunate enough to be a solution center. So, we can do some testing for you, some files if need be. So let us know if you guys need any help on that as well. I think on that note, I think we can jump into the Q&A here. Matt, did you have anything you wanted to add there? You want to just jump into the question and answers here?
Not really. I mean, the only thing to add, really, we're like I said before, we are open for demos, and so if it's face mask related or whatever it is, if you are interested in getting into T-shirt making with a DTG printer with on DTG side, or apparel with sublimation, or whatever it might be, whether it's socks or shoes or want to do Chromelex metal panels, whatever that involves, just call us. We're open for customized demos, and we're here in Plano, Texas. If you're in the area, so just call us. We can set that up and do that for you. So we're all open.
Absolutely. And like Matt said too, that's a really good point. I know we're talking a lot about masks here today, but with both of these printers, there are so many opportunities out there. So like, again, if it's something you're already into with direct to garment, this is a new offering, or maybe this could be that push to say, hey, this makes sense for me to jump into. So if you guys have any questions, hopefully you guys can see the Q&A here. I think, let me open it up. And Jonathan asked a question here. He says, I've had a request for a client about printing ink in the material used in the transfer as a proof for human consumption. A certification that I can show the potential client. Great question, Jonathan. And I'll dig that up for you. I'll grab your email after all this. But yes, everything has been certified. So again, that's one of Epson's kind of, I guess, great things that they're kind of achieving here is they make sure everything has been safe. We call it safe for babies, pets, and the like. So absolutely, this will be something that you can sell safely and know that your clients will not be hurt with it. Absolutely. Great question. Are there any questions that you guys have? You can open up the Q&A if you want to type in any questions or. We must have done a good job. I'm not getting many questions here.
Hey, just summed it all up. Yeah, just covered everything.
Perfect. There we go, guys. Awesome. Hey, Ian. Hey, okay. Ian's asking if there's any concerns for bleed through the mask itself. Now, as long as you're cautious, I haven't noticed any. If worst case scenario, if it might be a thinner material that you might see some of it seep through, I might recommend putting a parchment sheet or some kind of protectant in between there. But no, I'll tell you, with the mask that I've sublimated, it seems to transfer perfect. I don't get any extra residue from the other side or anything of that nature. So a lot of it's how you prep the actual mask there. Oh, okay. I see. Same question. Okay, yeah. So. Like I said, no, I really have not noticed that per se, and I know part of it might be with the certain materials or the certain companies we're buying them from. But no, nothing to be concerned about. Now, on that note too, and this is, I know you guys are talking about the already pre-sewn masks. The best way, I suppose, to kind of avoid that, if that's something you're afraid of, is when you sublimate, you can sublimate onto the fabric itself and then potentially sew that together. But Tom asked, how long will the pre-treating be good for in the direct-to-garment printing? Great question. And something I didn't really show there that I will kind of bring up. So when I pre-treat these particular masks, rather than running it through my pre-treat machine, I have a hand sprayer that I kind of spray with these. Now, there's two things you can do. I can put them under my press and kind of heat them that way, or I can just leave them out in the sun a little bit, kind of like if you've ever done any like the hat pre-treatment as well. Very similar on that. Now, what we've noticed here, and essentially the pre-treat is as good as long as the garment has not been washed. Now, I'll tell you from my experience, I usually say after about that month time, Maybe 2-3 weeks I have no issues with. About a month, maybe just be cautious. We might need to lay down a little bit more, but overall, yeah, that'll stay on the garment until that first wash happens. Mhm. So I mean, I see the biggest concern I'm seeing here is the bleed through on the mask. And like I said, from my experience, nothing that I was dealing with that seemed to be a major issue for me. So any other questions, guys? Great question, Tom. And actually, we should touch on this for sure. So Tom's asking if there's any pros and cons for the process as far as breathability through the material. And great question here. So one thing I will say, and now if we're coming from kind of the standpoint of, I guess, quality and kind of protection and things of that nature, polyester is a little bit more breathable. It's a little more porous as well. So a lot of it does depend on kind of what your comfort level is. I like the 95.5s, the ones that are cotton and have a little bit of the spandex in there. Again, it's different strokes for different folks. As far as breathability goes, I do feel like the poly, again, since it is porous, I feel like it's a little more breathable. The cotton can sometimes be stuffy, especially if it's some of the thick cottons. I don't know if you guys are seeing a lot of the people kind of making their masks at home, which we can print on too as well, but those tend to be a little bit thicker. And that's, again, in my opinion, but I feel like those are a little restricting sometimes. Ian, great question here. Longevity of the dye sub on the fabric. Well, honestly, that's going to last you, again, we're literally dyeing these fabrics. So, direct to garment, since we're actually kind of laying the print on top of it, might, it's going to hold up, I guess I would call it essentially as a screen print would. So, our general rule of thumb, 40 to 80 washes, it's not like it's going to disappear, but you might start to see some fading. Now, the masks are a little bit of a different oddity. So, we're going to see as far as the wash goes, we do try to keep the same recommendations as the t-shirt. So, don't tumble dry high heat, wash with light colors and the things of that nature. So, I'd say as long as you're being cautious about how you treat and wash the garment, that's not going to be something to worry about. And again, with the sublimation side of things, we're literally dyeing it into there. So, scratch resistant and all that, it's not going to be something that you're going to see that's actually going to like flake off or coat or be removed too much over time. So not something to be too concerned on that side. So Tom's asking about the graphic coverage. So like when I covered that entire mask, if that's going to reduce the breathability, and no, it's not. So again, we're really just dyeing these fibers. So I'm not closing off any pores or anything of that nature. I'm not restricting the airflow per se. I'm really dyeing those fibers that are around there. So you're really working with the same quality of material. It's just that now you've got that dye across the board there. Great questions, guys. Anything else out there? So Tom's asking about the breathability with DTG. Now, essentially we are closing up a few of those pores since we are laying down that swatch of ink, especially if we're laying down the white below it. But again, remember that all the direct-to-garment inks have been Okotex certified. So, I have a feeling that probably 90% of people wouldn't notice a breathability difference. Maybe some of those that are a little bit more sensitive to those kinds of things. But the ink that you're breathing, don't feel like that's going to be anything that's going to be harmful or going to cause any kind of duress or anything like that because it has been certified. The only thing you might notice is, it might have a bit more of a hand to it. So, you might notice it's a little bit thicker feeling than maybe some of the polyester masks might be, just because that ink is essentially kind of sitting on top of that. Now, again, I will kind of just reiterate here, and both are great options for the mask. Really, the biggest kind of deciding factor is what else do you want to do with this machine, and also are you dealing with cotton and dark blend? So that's really the determining factors for which way to go between direct-to-garment or sublimation. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate it. Yeah, we'll definitely be doing more of these guys. So, hopefully you're kind of starting to see all the emails kind of float out there. But we're going to try to keep this on a pretty regular basis. So, always down for some suggestions too. We'll be talking about some P-series stuff coming up soon. But we figure this is pretty timely and relevant. So we hope this kind of gets some ideas flowing for you. Any other questions, guys? All right, I think I pretty much got everybody there.
Okay. Well, hey, if there are any questions, just call us. Number 1-800-342-9294. My name is Matt McComic. I'm the inkjet manager here. You've been talking to Zach Jones, who is our head technical guy, guru, knows all about these products. You can also call Steve Ben. He is our one of our product managers over here as well, especially on the DTG side. So just call us with any questions. If you want to come in, do a customized demo, kind of see it in action yourself. Definitely, we're open to do that. So yeah, we're just happy to provide you any information on these printers and what they can do. And we're here for you, so just let us know.
Absolutely, guys. And thanks again for tuning in. Hey, I'm just going to grab one quick last question here because I saw Alex said he kind of came in late, so he just wants a quick summary of the process. Really simple, Alex. I'm going to break it down as simple as I can. You're going to print onto a transfer sheet. You're going to apply that transfer sheet to your mask or your fabric. You're going to heat press that particular sheet, and when you remove the sheet from it, that ink will transfer from the sheet and dye the actual fabric that we're transferring it onto. So correct, with the heat press is how we're going to actually achieve that. Pressure and heat are our two key elements there.
Oh, and Zach, we did get another question about customization. The beauty thing about this is you're not just doing one pattern over and over again. I mean, you can do different, several different types of designs all on the fly, at one time. So, especially with DTG, it's just one after another. So it's not something like, oh, it's just one pattern and that's all you're doing. That's what you're stuck with. So it's really customizable. It just diverse, at you. It doesn't take a lot of time to do each one. Doesn't interfere with your cost or anything like that. So yeah, it is it's very good on the fly process to do these face masks and other things that are involved with both the DTG printer and the dye sublimation.
And again, that is the cool thing about these machines is they are so versatile. If one thing doesn't stick, then you kind of find that next niche, and you kind of you work your way and you find that sweet spot for you. And I'll tell you, once you do, that's where we really see the big success stories. So. All right, guys. Well, I think, Alex, thanks for joining again. Yeah. And just to let you guys know, we're working on this too. So, Alex, I know some of you guys might have missed portions of this, but we're going to try to put these online for you guys as well. So, kind of like a learning resource for you guys in the future too. And like Matt said, obviously, I'm always more than happy to talk one-on-one. So, give us a shout, and we can kind of dive deeper into some of the nitty-gritty there. All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to be it for now, unless there's any kind of questions that you guys want to throw my way.
Yeah, Zach, if you show the phone number screen one more time,
yeah,
we'll leave it as that. And
absolutely.
And then, well, yeah, and especially if y'all are interested in that 570 printer, I know that's a hot one. Definitely give us a call because they're in and out. We have them stock and then they're out, and so we're taking pre-orders. Definitely get you up on top of the list. We are getting them in every week, and so just give us a call, and we can get you one.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Thanks for sticking with us, and hopefully we'll see you guys soon on another one of our webinars here.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Bye, guys.